What if the child we've come to recognize as the embodiment of royal reinvention was never biologically tied to the woman who built her legacy around him? What if Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor, whose face has graced headlines, charity campaigns, and carefully curated Netflix specials, was not born of Meghan Markle at all? It's not a question you expect to hear, and certainly not from the one man you might have assumed had already said everything he could possibly say about her. But today, just 1 minute ago, as if some invisible embargo had lifted, Piers Morgan said something he hadn't said before. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. And it wasn't opinion.
It wasn't snark. It wasn't even outrage.
It was a file. And it came with a simple caption: "You deserve to know the truth." They never expected this to come out. We've heard Piers talk before. Too much, some would argue. He's been called relentless, vindictive, obsessed.
But this time, he didn't say much.
He just posted what appears to be a leaked DNA report, one with a signature, a date, a name, and another name missing. There was no context, no official verification. Yet.
But there it was. A small box, circled in red.
Biological mother, not a match. And just like that, the air changed. Now, before we dive into this, before we peel back the layers of what could be the most consequential royal revelation since Diana's recorded tapes, we need to stop and ask ourselves, why does this matter?
Why now? Isn't this all old news?
A tired obsession? We've seen the headlines.
We've watched the interviews, the docuseries, the viral clips. We've heard every theory under the sun. Fake baby bumps, hidden surrogates, silence from the palace, blurred photos, photoshopped bellies. It all sounded too wild to believe, too convenient to be true. And perhaps that was the point. Perhaps we were supposed to grow tired of it. So when the real evidence surfaced, if it ever did, most people would have already tuned out. But now something has broken through. This leak, this DNA document, isn't just an internet rumor. It's not from some obscure blog or Twitter conspiracy thread. It comes directly from the man who has been at the center of this saga from the very beginning. And whether you trust him or not, one thing is clear. Piers Morgan just shifted the entire conversation. Let's get uncomfortable for a moment, because if this document is real, and that's still a question, we are not just dealing with a personal secret. We're looking at a foundational lie. A lie that redefines how we understand Meghan Markle's relationship with the monarchy. A lie that reframes Harry's departure from royal duties. A lie that touches on the very existence of their children. Children whose faces were withheld from the public with intense deliberation, whose private lives were wrapped in statements about safety and well-being, but who might now become part of a very different story. One that involves surrogacy, or perhaps something even more complicated. And here's the emotional contradiction that we're all going to have to sit with. Even if Meghan didn't give birth to Archie, she may still be his mother, in every sense that matters. But the real question isn't emotional. It's not philosophical. It's legal. Did she knowingly deceive the world? And if so, why? Was it out of fear? Out of image control? Or was there a plan, one constructed long before the cameras ever found her? Long before she ever walked down the aisle? I want to pause here for a moment. Because if you're watching this, chances are you're either one of two people. You've been waiting for this. Or you're still deeply skeptical. And maybe you should be. Maybe we all should be. Because no matter how you feel about Meghan Markle, no matter what you believe about her motives or her past or her future, this moment demands something we haven't had enough of. Caution, context, clarity. We can't just look at this as gossip, because if it's true, if this leak is verified and backed by more than a single document, then it will become part of a wider web of truth. One that spans fertility clinics, hospital records, legal contracts, surrogacy, confidentiality clauses, and a silent war between palace insiders and media giants. And that's the real story. That's why this isn't just about Meghan. It's about how far someone, or perhaps several people, went to bury something they feared the public might never forgive. So, what do we know so far? Not much. Not definitively. But here's what we've been told. According to the leaked file, dated June 2020, Meghan Markle's DNA was submitted alongside another sample, presumably Archie's. The report concludes with an anomaly, a mismatch. The maternal markers don't align. Now, this could be faked. It could be a decoy. It could be part of an elaborate smear campaign. But the file includes metadata. It includes a scan of a lab's header, now inactive. It includes an internal reference number that, when run through a legacy diagnostic system from an anonymized source, matches a known patient submission from London. And that's where it gets dangerous. Because that lab, it's pals. Because it is now arrogant, bid above the market, to rise or fall, take it's not in a cabin, but its opposite that creates the highest. About a year from time, it's no longer operational. Shut down in late 2022, quietly. No press release, just gone. And if you ask the people who used to work there, those who've been willing to talk off the record, they'll tell you one thing. There was one file they were told to never speak about again. Let's talk emotional fallout. If you're Harry, and you saw this file for the first time today, what are you thinking? Is this new to him? Or has he known all along? We've seen his face shift in interviews. We've seen moments of protectiveness, but also hesitance. Moments where he seemed to bite his tongue. Has he been covering for her? Or has he been kept in the dark? And what about the palace? There were whispers, years ago, that someone, some senior royal, had insisted on formal verification of Archie's birth. It was framed at the time as racism, an insult. But what if it was suspicion, not of race, of record? Because if there were questions from within the royal family, and if those questions were silenced with accusations of prejudice, then this leak isn't just exposing Meghan. It's exposing how weaponized narratives can be used to protect secrets, and animons, agitated, even from those closest to them. Now, let's pull back. Just slightly. Let's ask the bigger question. What happens if this is real? Not just the leak, not just the DNA file, but the implication that Meghan Markle is not the biological mother of the child she introduced to the world as her own. Does the monarchy respond? Does Harry speak? I.e., do journalists finally get to ask questions they were once mocked for? Or is it already too late? Over time, it bears on no wider Aries. Has the public been groomed, subtly, skillfully, to look away from this very moment? Because remember, every time this topic has emerged in the past, it's been dismissed as cruel, speculative, unhinged. And maybe it was, but maybe that's what made it the perfect hiding place for the truth. So here we are, 1 minute after a bombshell. A digital file quietly dropped into the bloodstream of the internet. No press conference, no TikTok montage, just cold clinical data with a red circle around one name. Or rather, the absence of one. And here's what makes this story impossible to ignore. This wasn't leaked by a gossip blogger.
This wasn't floated anonymously through a tabloid tip line. It was posted directly, deliberately, by Piers Morgan.
The man who has spent years challenging Meghan's version of events. The man accused of personal vendettas and racial bias. The man dismissed again and again as a bitter relic of old media. He didn't need to say anything this time.
He just dropped the document.
And that silence, that restraint, that's what makes this different. In the next chapter, we're going to step into the moment it happened. Frame by frame, we'll examine the post, the timing, the details, the online reaction, and the real-time panic that unfolded behind palace gates and PR walls. But for now, let this sink in. If Meghan Markle is not Archie's biological mother, then every photo op, every documentary, every tearful testimony about motherhood takes on a different meaning. Not necessarily a sinister one, but one that was hidden, one that was controlled, and what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. Why that tweet? Why now? It wasn't loud. It wasn't clickbait. It didn't come with arrows, hashtags, or flashing graphics, just a single tweet from Piers Morgan's verified account, a screenshot of a document, followed by the words, "You deserve to know the truth." They never expected this to come out. No context, No tags. No press release. But it landed like a detonation, and within seconds, it was everywhere. Let's walk through that moment. Second by second. It was 7:59 a.m. GMT. A Wednesday. No warning, no tease. No build-up, just that tweet. Within the first 10 minutes, it had over 120,000 views. By 9 a.m., the UK tabloid sites were holding emergency editorial calls.
By noon, at least 3 U.S. networks had requested digital forensics analysts to examine the image.
And by 3 p.m., legal teams representing both Meghan Markle and Prince Harry had issued internal advisories to senior staff, all of this from a single tweet. And the irony? It didn't even name her directly.
But everyone knew. Everyone knew.
You felt it, didn't you? That pause, that silence. It wasn't just the media waiting to verify. It was something else. Something quieter. Darker. Like an unspoken agreement being broken. For years, Meghan Markle has existed inside a shield. One part sympathy, one part strategy. The narrative has been fixed. She was the outsider, the American, the actress, the woman who took on the monarchy and exposed its cruelty. And for many, that story was enough. But something about this document, this line, this moment, cut through the noise. It wasn't commentary, it wasn't drama, it was data. And that's what made it dangerous. Let's zoom in on the image. If you look closely, and millions did, you see a page from what appears to be a diagnostic lab's report, the kind used for maternity verification in disputed legal cases. Stamped, Enon, Nom Universe. Dated June 2020. At the top, a patient number. Anonymized, but not perfectly. Digital analysts immediately noted that the metadata embedded in the image file, likely unintentionally preserved, contained an internal reference code linked to a now-defunct lab once located in North London. The document includes typical markers, a list of chromosomal loci, cocini, calcini, and neuraliici, allows, matching sequences, and one damning line, mother, no confirmed match. That phrase, neutral, cold, but devastating. Now here's where it gets eerie. The tweet stayed up. No retraction, no clarification, and more importantly, no deletion. You might expect a lawsuit, a takedown notice, a formal denial, but instead, silence. The kind of silence that hums, the kind that isn't empty, but full. Full of people calling lawyers. Full of back-channel messages. Full of advisors scrambling for contingency plans they hoped they'd never use. Because a tweet like that doesn't just exist in the air, it pulses. It threatens. It makes people sweat. Especially when the source is him.
So why did Piers do it now?
Why not before? Why not after the coronation? Or the Netflix backlash? Or the Spotify fallout? Why? One quiet Wednesday morning. And perhaps more importantly, why so restrained? If you know Piers Morgan, you know he doesn't do subtle. He doesn't whisper. He throws punches. He said nothing. He let the image speak.
Was it because he knew how real it was? Was it because he didn't want to taint it with his voice?
Or was it fear? That's the word that kept coming up in behind-the-scenes conversations we've had since. Fear. Not from Piers, but from those around him. Because here's the thing. This wasn't just any document. It's not something you find in a tip inbox or on Reddit. This came from somewhere deep, a somewhere expensive, a somewhere private, 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 a somewhere private. Someone who shouldn't have had access had access, and they trusted Piers to release it. Not a publication, not a blog, Piers.
Which begs the question, who handed this to him?
And why him? That's where things get even murkier.
Because while the internet was dissecting the image pixel by pixel, trying to confirm authenticity, Palace insiders were focused on something else. They were watching the timing. You see, that tweet didn't go out randomly.
It came precisely 18 minutes after the end of a closed-door meeting at a Windsor estate. One confirmed to have included 3 high-ranking royal advisors.
What was the meeting about? We can't say for sure.
But one source, who has asked to remain unnamed, told us the final phrase spoken in that room was, "If he does it, it's over. If he doesn't, it's containment."
And then, 18 minutes later, Piers hit send.
Let's talk reactions. The media froze.
For once, everyone hesitated. Some outlets posted cautious blurbs. Most avoided headlines altogether. But social media? It exploded. Some called it fake, obviously. Others called it a long overdue reckoning. And then came the third wave. People digging. Old clips, old interviews, pregnancy videos, and Arrow, that infamous belly shift moment during a 2019 charity event. Suddenly, people weren't laughing anymore. They were re-watching and noticing things they hadn't noticed before. The stomach shape, the hand placements, the missed due date, the confusion around the birth certificate. It all started to add up, not definitively, but enough to crack the seal. And once that seal was broken, there was no putting it back. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt a story before it broke? Not heard it? Not read it? Felt it. That strange pressure in the air when something's been waiting, simmering, for too long? That was this moment. Because whether the document is real or not, something changed when it was posted. It gave weight to years of speculation. It reframed the silence.